Hello everybody, this is FTC Primitive Data, and this is the first video in our new series that teaches the necessary Fusion 360 CAD skills for FTC. After completing these videos, you'll be able to create assemblies such as the shooter and use hard surface modeling to create custom 3D printed, CNC, or laser cut parts. This series is broken down into a few topics. It starts with sketches, then we'll cover create tools, construct tools, modify tools, joints, assemblies, renderings, and drawings. After every few videos, we'll use the skills that have been learned to work on creating this screw and nut that has working and realistic joints, and then we will render it and create a blueprint for it. This first video just focuses on navigating Fusion and using the UI, just basic skills that are applicable to the rest of the videos. So if I just hop over to this cube here, we can cover panning. And what panning does is you just move left and right and up and down while facing this object. You're not changing your rotation. So the way that you can do that is you can either hold down mouse 3, which allows you to pan like this. So we're changing our view of the object, or you can click down here and activate that and then just use mouse 1, and that should give the same effect. Now for rotation around an object, a free orbit, one where you're orbiting in all 3 axes at once, you just hold down shift and mouse 3, and that green dot is where you're rotating around. So I'm rotating around all 3 axes at once. To do a constrained orbit where you only rotate around one axis at a time, such as the X or Y or Z, you can hop down to this drop down menu here and click on constrained orbit. That should bring out this faint gray circle with lines, and the lines represent rotation axes that you can do. So if I select this one, which is the Y axis, and I just hold down left click, I'm just rotating around the Y now. And if I choose a different one, then I'm just rotating around that one. And to zoom on an object, and escape just to cancel that and return back. And to zoom on an object, it's just the scroll wheel as you would normally do. And another key important tool for moving around objects is the look at feature, which is right down here. If you click on that and then click on a face, you'll look at that face. It will automatically reposition the camera. So now I'm looking at the bottom face, which is indicated by this map up here. This is the bottom one, and you can use this will rotate my view like this, or I can go like this and change the view. If I click on home, it'll return back to the home position. Another feature is the multiple viewports, which can be used to see different angles on an object at the same time. So if I activate this down here, the shortcut is shift exclamation mark. I can activate multiple viewports, and now I can change the view in different viewports at once. So if I pan this one, I can see it from there. If I rotate like this, now I have 2 different views on the same object. And to collapse back into one view, you just go here and go back to single view. It's the same shortcut as before, shift exclamation. To change the background of the viewport, which is just this area that we're working on you can go down here to display settings, and under environment there's different settings that you can use. So there's dark sky, gray room, etc. I like it just on the white. I find it easiest to see the objects. You can also change the visual style, so instead of seeing just the shaded object, I can do a shaded with hidden edges, and I can see the hidden edges of the cube that I wouldn't normally see. I think that just keeping it on the shaded with visible edges only is good, but sometimes wireframe can be useful. And so now let's look at the different workspaces. So right now we're in the design workspace, and this is where you create bodies. This is a body. This cube is a body. You can do hard surface modeling and mesh modeling, but there's other workspaces like the render workspace where we can do a render of the object we've created. They have the animation workspace where you can create animations of assemblies. The simulation where you can run different tests on objects to determine if they'll break. And the manufacturer workspace is used for CAM, such as CNC. And finally, the drawing workspace allows you to create a blueprint of the design. Mostly you'll just be spending your time in this design workspace, as it's all you really need for hard surface modeling and assemblies. And up here on the top bar, we've got the tools, and these are different things that we can use in the design workspace. So we have the create tools, the modify tools, the assemble tools, the construct tools, the inspect tools, the insert tools, and the selection tools. And the selection tools are useful because you can change the way that you select objects, and I'll demonstrate that here in the shooter CAD that I showed earlier. So when you do a box select like this, if you drag from the top left, the left and the right, then it'll select all objects that are even partially inside this box. And if you go from the right to the left, then it'll select all of the objects that are fully in the box. But there's other selections that you can use as well. Oh, excuse me, I got that backwards. Left to right is partial. Right to left is or right to left is partial. Left to right is full. So if you go like this, it'll select all the objects that are even partially inside. But there's other selection types such as freeform selection. If I just wanted to avoid some parts, I could go like this and just get the ones that were inside. And they have other selection types such as paint selection. Mostly you just need this one. And now let's take a look at the browser over here, which contains basically all the information about what's going on inside here. So the first part is up here we've got the name of the file, and I can hide everything in the file by clicking this eye icon. And then everything else is stored inside the file. So document settings, we can change the units. So right now I'm working in millimeters, but if I wanted to work in inches, I could change it to inches, and then all my measurements would be in inches, and all my dimensions. Named views is just you've got your top, front, right, and home, but you can add views, such as if I was making a render and I like this view, I could right click here on named views and do new named views. And then if you want to change the name of anything in this browser, all you have to do is double click, and I could change it to render. Next we got the origin, which we'll cover in the sketches, but it's just some planes and axes that the file is based around. We have the joints, which we'll be covering later, but this is how you assemble multiple parts and create realistic interactions between them. Bodies will also be covering in the sketches and the create tutorials. Sketches will be covering in the sketches tutorials, and here we have all of our components. So if I wanted to hide all of the components, but I wanted to leave the joints showing, for example, I couldn't just hide it like this, because then everything would hide. So one way that you can do that is you can left click here, and you can scroll down to the bottom and click again, and then if you right click you can do hide, and the shortcut for that is V. So now once that's hidden, my joints are still showing and all my bodies are hidden. And I can do this, I can show them again by just scrolling back to the top like this and pressing V, and that'll bring everything back. So that's really really important to get a hang of hiding objects, like hiding a subset of objects or hiding all the objects. And when you right click on an object here, it gives you different options, and these can be very useful for just if in a large assembly doing a action to a specific object and making sure that it's that object that you're applying it to, versus clicking in this assembly somewhere and hoping that you get the right thing. And then finally, we're going to take a look at the timeline at the bottom here, and this will become it'll become clearer as we cover the next topics, but the timeline basically keeps a history of everything you've done in the file, and these icons represent different things. So if I look here, this is a rigid joint, and at this point I inserted a component into this assembly. So we'll cover this more, and I'll explain more how to manipulate the timeline, but just briefly, if I wanted to go back and I wanted to edit this joint right here that I made, I could right click here and edit joint, and Fusion 360 would roll back to when the assembly only had these components. It's how much was in at that time, and I could edit it here and it would change everything downstream. So if I made it rotated, or I moved it over or something, it would change everything else after that, and it would update. So it's really important to make sure everything's built properly so you can go back and edit stuff that you did before, and Fusion 360 will recalculate it properly in the way that you're expecting it to. So that's all for this video. In the next video, we'll be looking at some basic sketching commands and starting to make some stuff.